You're watching Channel 5.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the economy and politics, and these days it's impossible to separate the two. At the White House today, it was a particularly combustible mixture. A delegation from the National Governors Association arrived to talk about the economy. The in and out is supposed to be routine. The president says a few words, the cameras record the moment, and then leave the room. And if the governors want to appear on television, they walk outside and have their say in the White House driveway. But as you all know, this is an election year, and here's our White House correspondent, Britt Hume.
The president came into the East Room to polite applause from the governors, Democrats and Republicans alike. The White House had planned to permit TV coverage of Mr. Bush's appeal for their support for his economic program, and then to have a little off-camera give and take. But when the press was about to leave, Colorado Democratic Governor Romer objected.
Could I ask the press not to leave yet? Excuse me, we need a new format here. There are a couple of points that you made that I think have partisan implications, and I just frankly want to answer them before the press leaves the room.
While White House Chief of Staff Skinner looked on, anxiously biting his nails, Romer attacked the Bush budget as having too many gimmicks.
We're concerned about the budget that you've laid out. We're concerned that it does not provide the revenue.
But if it doesn't provide the revenue, are you all suggesting a tax increase now at the federal level?
No, said Romer. He was suggesting there should be more taken from defense spending.
That we ought to take the peace dividend, whatever size it is, 50 to 100 billion over 5 years, and have it directed toward economic stimulation of the country.
Wait a minute, said the president. If you want a $100 billion peace dividend, twice what he's offered, how do you get it?
What bases do you want to close? What areas do you want to shut down? What weapon systems do you want to knock off right now?
Okay.
Or do you want to lay off the people?
I don't know the answer to that because I don't sit in the halls of Congress, but I think that debate ought to go forward.
White House advisors profess to be delighted with the president's performance, but the Democrats may have just as good reason for satisfaction with Romer's. After all, how many of them will get the chance this year to dispute the president on his budget in the White House with the cameras rolling? Britt Hume, ABC News, the White House.
For President Bush, it is turning out to be an uphill battle convincing the voters that he's the one to best handle matters. We've been tracking public opinion in the week since Mr. Bush made his State of the Union speech, and over this weekend, 44% of those we asked said they think the Democrats will do a better job on the economy. 40% think Mr. Bush. There's also been a lot of talk about helping the middle class, and we asked which party could do the best job, and a clear majority, 52%, said the Democrats. The question is how to convince the voters that the Democrats are on the right track. In the first state where it matters politically, the Democrats running for president are having a very hard time convincing the voters that they have an immediate solution to immediate problems. ABC's Jim Wooten is in New Hampshire.
You can ice skate out here.
As they trudge on through the hard times of New Hampshire's wintry recession, there is little mention of foreign policy or disarmament or the environment. Wherever the Democrats go these days, whomever they see, only the economy seems to matter, nothing else. How bad it is, and who's to blame for it.
George Bush.
Ronald Reagan and Paul Volcker.
And they don't give a rip snort about what happens to you, lady.
And what to do about it. Governor Brown recommends a flat tax on businesses and individuals.
13% of gross income and 13% of value added.
And to deal with the deficit,
cut the defense in half over 5 years.
And in my economic program, I've called for reducing military expenditures by 50% over 10 years, taking $280 billion of that and putting it into job-creating activities, and $140 billion for deficit reduction.
Your nation is losing its economic edge, its economic leadership. We are not generating wealth quick enough, and we are distributing it more unequally.
It's crucial that our government declare that we are going to have an industrial policy that expresses a preference for those jobs that will create higher wages.
Senator Kerry also suggests getting tough with Japan. Former Senator Tsongas believes that's wrong.
Because what that says to the American people is, we're not the problem, they're the problem. Well, we're the problem, too.
Again and again, the candidates have carefully pointed out the differences among them on such matters as an income tax cut for the middle class, on trade policy, on defense spending cuts. And while some voters may be attracted to all this detail, most are simply overwhelmed by the enormity of the problems and the complexity of the solutions.
I don't really see any big issues between them.
There's not a lot of difference between them, I don't think.
The average economic voter in the state is dealing with his own immediate problems, and they're not saying a whole lot that's going to deal with the immediate problem.
This is just 1 week's foreclosure notices and this is our town.
This woman had an immediate problem. She told Senator Harkin she and her unemployed husband will soon lose their house.
What are we going to do about the homeless? We're going to be these homeless people.
All the Democrats are trying to respond to all this anxiety, but no one message seems to have much more resonance than another. And voters may simply have to make their choice, as they often have before, on their instincts and intuition about the candidates, not on the economic details. Jim Wooten, ABC News, Manchester, New Hampshire.
A couple of other notes. The White House said today that Japanese criticism of American workers is, in the White House's words, not helpful. This morning, the Japanese Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa said America is losing its work ethic, producing too many highly paid Wall Street dealers and too few engineers. And statistical confirmation today that 1991 was a miserable year for the construction industry. The amount of money spent to build everything from homes to shopping malls and factories was down more than 9%, and that is the largest decline in 47 years. On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials gained more than 10 points to close at 3234, and the trading was moderate. In a moment, some of the other news. The trial of General Noriega. The defense begins presenting its case. On the American agenda tonight, we begin a week of special reports on the crisis in health care. Tonight, how billions of dollars could be saved by cutting back on the paperwork. And finally this evening, on the University of Iowa campus, yes, Elvis lives.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Kraft Free Singles.
Aha! So that's what happened to Dad's Kraft Free Singles.
What free singles?
The fat-free kind. Helps Dad watch his fat and cholesterol.
Haven't seen them. Besides, we like them.
Sorry, campers, but these are different. See? Kraft-free means fat-free. For Dad.
Aha!
Oh, we'll save him some. Any bread in this?
Kraft Free Singles. Flavor like that without the fat.
Nighttime. One of the worst times for pain. Pain that's hard to face alone. That's why you need new Ultra Strength Bengay, with more pain relievers than we've ever had before. For muscle pain, it's hard to ignore. Minor arthritis pain, back pain, pain that seems worse at night. New Ultra Strength Bengay, with more pain relievers than ever. Deep, penetrating warmth for fast, long-lasting relief. You can say goodnight to your pain with new Ultra Strength Bengay.
There are reports today of drug dealing on Capitol Hill. A clerk who works at the House Post Office is reported to have admitted that while on the job, he regularly sold cocaine to employees and non-employees. The clerk and 2 others are also said to have taken thousands of dollars from post office funds. In Miami today, the defense began presenting its case on behalf of General Manuel Noriega. The former Panamanian dictator is on trial for allegedly helping Colombian drug dealers get their drugs into the United States. Here's ABC's Mark Potter.
The defense is trying to claim that all along, General Noriega was acting as an ally in the war against drugs. Defense attorney John May told the jury that Noriega gave American law enforcement unprecedented cooperation by seizing drugs and drug money and by catching smugglers and fugitives.
These events occurred at the very same time that the government has alleged General Noriega was in bed with the Medellin cartel.
The defense is expected to argue that while Noriega may have met with Colombian traffickers, it was only in an effort to gather intelligence. Ironically, while most of the prosecution witnesses were confessed drug smugglers and money launderers, most of the witnesses for Noriega are DEA agents and other government officials. But the defense strategy ran into trouble with its first witness. Former DEA chief Peter Benzinger said he considered Noriega unprofessional and always regarded him with suspicion. Another former DEA chief, John Lawn, was more helpful to the defense. He said he wrote a letter to Noriega congratulating him for the vigorous anti-drug trafficking policy that you have adopted. The prosecution's answer to all this is that while Noriega might have cooperated with the U.S. in some cases, He was secretly taking bribes and protecting traffickers at the same time.
The fact that he's helped the government for so many years is really what made him so valuable to those drug traffickers who could corrupt him.
Still, sources say the DEA is bracing for embarrassing testimony from some of its own agents, that in their zeal to stop the flow of drugs through Panama, they relied on Noriega, who prosecutors say helped the drugs to flow. Mark Potter, ABC News, Miami.
The first Haitian refugees were sent home today. Nearly 400 Haitians out of 12,000 in U.S. custody were returned to Haiti, where Red Cross officials gave them $15 apiece and sent them on their way. Human rights groups have warned that the returnees could face the most serious reprisals from Haitian security forces. The State Department says that in all the years the U.S. has been sending Haitians home, not one has been targeted for persecution. There is alarming news today about the environment. The ozone layer, that layer of the atmosphere which protects us all from the sun's most harmful rays, seems to be in worse shape than scientists had believed. For the first time, scientists see that the ozone layer is deteriorating over areas of the Earth where a lot of us live. Here's ABC's Barry Seraphin.
Since last October, NASA has been using specially equipped planes to study the atmosphere over the Arctic and the rest of the Northern Hemisphere.
None of the news is good from the perspective of the development of an ozone hole.
Scientists say it is growing more likely that over the next decade, an ozone hole like the one over the Antarctic will form over the Arctic region. And they are concerned by satellite data like this, looking down at the North Pole, showing high levels of chlorine that is depleting the ozone in the atmosphere from Canada and New England to Europe and Asia.
What we're dealing with is a problem that extends to the very populated regions of the Northern Hemisphere.
Even before today's findings, scientists were predicting that ozone depletion would lead to 300,000 new cases of skin cancer every year. Researchers are calling for a speed up in the elimination of CFCs and other ozone-depleting chemicals, now scheduled to be phased out around the turn of the century. That call was echoed on Capitol Hill by Senator Gore, who denounced the Bush administration.
No one should be startled by today's findings. The warnings have been clear and loud. The problem is they've also been repeatedly ignored by an administration that refuses to listen.
EPA officials are studying the timetable for eliminating ozone-destroying chemicals, but even if those chemicals were outlawed tomorrow, there are already enough of them in the atmosphere to continue doing damage for decades. Barry Seraphin, ABC News, Washington.
One other note from overseas this evening. In the mountains of southeastern Turkey, they are digging out from under a series of avalanches that have buried a number of villages during the past several days. More than 170 people are known to have been killed. Most of the relief workers only have shovels to work with because the snow is too high to move in heavy equipment. In a moment, we begin a week of special reports on the crisis in American health care. Tonight, the high cost of insurance fraud.
Flu epidemic declared. Entire U.S. affected. Fever, congestion, body aches. What will you do? Get serious medicine. Doctors recommend TheraFlu. TheraFlu is hot liquid medicine. Strong therapy for flu symptoms. Hot liquid therapy that works fast. What will you do when you get the flu? Doctors recommend TheraFlu. Strong therapy for flu symptoms.
Here's a sweet idea for breakfast.
Try Sunsweet prune juice for a change.
It's naturally sweet and delicious.
Sunsweet prune juice adds no sugar.
It's perfect just the way it is.
Remind you of anyone?
Not really.
Pain from just one sensitive tooth can start the domino effect. Pain can make you stop brushing, lead to plaque buildup, gingivitis, periodontal disease, even tooth loss. Sensodyne toothpaste helps stop the pain and the domino effect.
If this were a perfect world, we'd all be driving expensive cars and living on beachfront property. But in the real world, you have to eat. Well, you can eat tuna once in a while. And you have to buy stuff like socks and shoes and CDs. Well, maybe not so many CDs. Fortunately, the people at Isuzu have to buy stuff too. That's why they created the Rodeo, a four-wheel drive vehicle you can afford, and why they'll give you a great deal on a sound system and air conditioning. So now, you can buy more stuff. Oh, we forgot to mention taxes.
You may have already heard that every ABC News broadcast this week will be devoting time to the crisis in health care, a crisis particularly for those millions of Americans who do not have medical coverage at all, and a crisis in some way for virtually all Americans who know from individual experience that medical costs are getting out of control. One factor in the high cost of health care is outright fraud, estimated to cost $50 billion a year. Today, the FBI announced plans to double the number of investigators assigned to health care fraud, and federal prosecutors have now charged officers of a now-defunct insurance company based in Denver with defrauding customers in 14 states. Here's ABC's John Martin.
In Boston, authorities arrested a lawyer who worked for a health insurance company called Cabot Day and its marketing firm called Equity Medcare. 4 officials from the firm's Denver headquarters were also indicted. The 5 are charged with racketeering, conspiracy, theft, and wire fraud. The indictment charges the defendants sold policies in 14 states. It says they collected more than $5.5 million in health insurance premiums from 11,000 clients, but refused to pay claims. In Texas, the wife of auto mechanic Don Collins was one of the policy holders. After she got cancer, the company refused to pay her claims. She died, and he is left with $150,000 in unpaid bills.
And probably what I'm going to have to end up doing, I'll probably have to end up filing bankruptcy.
Victims like Don Collins are often defenseless, federal investigators told ABC News, because these companies often do not register with state agencies which are supposed to protect policyholders.
In many cases, even the insurance regulators themselves do not know the company is in existence until the fraud has been detected.
Officials indicted today insist their companies paid claims they felt were proper and did no wrong. The Labor Department says it has 37 firms under investigation for exactly the same kind of fraud alleged today. John Martin, ABC News, Washington.
More on the health care crisis in just a moment. On the American agenda tonight, the high cost of paperwork.
Cutbacks continue. Recession. Politicians. Crime. Pollution. Daycare. Not having any time. Job insecurity.
You never needed it more. A new extra-strength pain reliever made to get today's tough headaches before they really get you. 1,000 milligrams, stomach guard, and the name Bayer. That should ease your mind. Introducing new extra-strength Bayer Plus. For headaches, now there's no pain you can't bear.
Take a 3, 4, or 7-day fun ship vacation to the Bahamas, Caribbean, or Mexican Riviera on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
Campbell's heard your healthy requests.
Low fat.
Less salt.
But lots of taste.
Here's our answer. New Campbell's Healthy Request ready-to-serve soups. All the great taste you want without some things you don't. New Campbell's Healthy Request. And healthy.
If I started serving these, my guys would just find another truck stop. Now, can't you put in some raisins or pecans or blueberries? These flakes need help. These aren't bad at all. They're simple, but the bottom line taste is pretty good. Scratch out what I said before. These are good.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes? I knew it. I really had to go in there, didn't I?
Taste them again for the first time.
I was afraid to go to the doctor. I didn't want to hear that I might have an ulcer, but I just couldn't ignore my stomach. You can imagine how relieved I was when my doctor said Mylanta. He told me it wasn't an ulcer. It was indigestion. And indigestion like mine needed a strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine, strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Just to remind you, there are 35 million Americans who have no health care coverage at all, and those who do are finding it increasingly expensive. On the American agenda tonight, why is the cost of coverage so high, and what can be done to bring it down? Part of the problem is red tape. Consider this. In Canada, paperwork accounts for only a penny of every dollar spent on health care. In the U.S., the paperwork cost is 10 times more. Our agenda reporter is Tim Johnson.
That was another passion of hers, said Lindsay.
Stephen and Martha Cadell of Charlotte, North Carolina know that in America, even if you have health insurance, getting sick is only the beginning of the battle. When Martha was diagnosed with leukemia 3 years ago, their only concern was whether she would survive her illness. But it wasn't long before they also wondered if they could survive the onslaught of all the insurance paperwork.
If you're doing the best you can, the system ought not to be so hard. The system ought to be more user-friendly. The system ought to be more responsive.
At that point, the Cadells were so desperate, they hired a person who helps people deal with their insurance companies.
Got another pile for you.
Okay. Frustration with insurance paperwork at a personal level is also symptomatic of a national problem. All that paperwork adds administrative costs to health care that many see as a target for significant savings. For example, the Congressional General Accounting Office has compared the U.S. system, where there are many private insurance companies, to Canada's system where the government is the single insurer. The government insurance program pays doctors and hospitals directly after they submit a simple billing form. The patient receives no bill, and private insurance companies are eliminated as administrative middlemen. The GAO estimates a similar billing system in the U.S. would save more than $66 billion a year in administrative costs. That includes $14.8 billion saved in doctors' offices, $18.2 billion saved in hospitals, and $33.9 billion saved in eliminating the overlapping administrative costs produced by more than 1,500 different health insurance programs now in the U.S.
The problem is that with 1,500 different insurance programs, each of them has to do their own advertising, their own marketing, their own premium collection and bills paying. There's enormous duplication of effort.
Even without adopting the entire Canadian health system, some proposals for health care reform in the U.S. would take their cue from Canada and eliminate private insurance companies in favor of having the government handle administration, the way it does with Social Security. That politically explosive suggestion is opposed by the Bush administration, which has instead urged that private insurance companies move to more electronic billing, such as computer transactions between healthcare providers and insurance companies without involving the patient. Carl Schramm of the Health Insurance Association of America says that would mean
basically an insurance industry that is paperless, where there are great savings to be reached.
The Bush administration estimates that the use of electronic billing would save about $8 billion a year. And this fall, Health and Human Services Secretary Louis Sullivan also proposed that consumers be issued a health insurance card, which they would present for automatic payment of bills by insurance companies. But critics say these are simplistic administrative solutions which do not begin to address the more fundamental problem of controlling the total cost of health care in this country. Princeton professor Paul Starr says the Bush administration approach
is like providing people with a card for an automatic teller machine, but no money in their bank account.
So far, politicians can find little ground for agreement when it comes to health care.
It is national health insurance. We all have to be covered.
We can reform our own private health care system.
But everyone agrees that for consumers like the Cadells, something needs to be done about the paperwork mess. And saving billions of dollars in administrative costs may at least be a place to begin. Dr. Timothy Johnson, ABC News.
Tomorrow night, we'll look at the battle to control one of the fastest rising costs in medical care, the cost of prescription drugs. We'll be back tonight in just a moment.
Morning breath.
As soon as I have my coffee, it's all gone.
Whether you admit it or not, it's a problem.
Okay, I have morning breath, but it doesn't bother anyone.
Don't be so sure.
Mine's not so bad.
Morning breath's not as bad as you think. It's worse. So get Scope. Its two powerful ingredients kill 90% of the bacteria that cause morning breath.
Was my morning breath really that bad?
There's no denying morning breath, so save your breath with Scope.
It was engineered to a higher standard with one of the world's most advanced suspension systems. It is nearly invisible to the wind. When it was built, it became an instant classic. The Accord Coupe from Honda. Everything else is just water under the bridge.
Special Accord leases are now available. See your nearest Honda dealer for details.
Everybody needs some money sometime.
Only Western Union can get money to over 16,000 locations in minutes. Nobody else even comes close. Western Union, the fastest way to send money.
I need a laxative that can work dependably.
Doxadan can.
But can it be gentle?
Doxadan can. Doxadan works dependably overnight with a special ingredient for gentle relief.
Dependable, yes. Gentle, yes.
Doxadan can.
Tonight on Nightline, with the U.S. forcing Haitian refugees back to what many claim is certain death, the exclusive story of one group's desperate attempt to reach America tonight.
Finally here this evening, the king goes to college. The spring semester has begun at most schools around the country, and students have returned to such heavyweight topics as advanced calculus, organic chemistry, and world history, and of course the classics, ancient and modern. Here's ABC's Chris Bury.
The University of Iowa campus appears to be a place of traditional scholarship until you get within earshot of room 109.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog.
Welcome to Elvis as Anthology, better known here as Elvis 101.
There's a kind of transformation taking place in Hound Dog.
Professor Peter Nazareth grew up listening to Elvis on the radio in Uganda. Now he's lecturing college students of the MTV generation on what Elvis was made of.
When you hear it, you've got to say, where does this thing come from?
At the core of the class is the professor's theory of Elvis as a kind of musical sponge who soaked up influences from everyone he heard, from Big Mama Thornton, the blues singer, to Mario Lanza, the Italian tenor.
Art is gumbo. Each cook has his or her own recipe, but takes all the ingredients from everywhere else, and then the mix is the artist's own, and you judge by the end result.
The class is sold out, all 50 openings taken, thanks to the staying power of the Elvis legend.
Oh, I gotta take this one.
Professor Nazareth has spent 35 years tracing the King's musical roots. When Elvis sings Blue Hawaii, for instance, the professor hears a classic crooner.
I hear Elvis trying to sing like Bing Crosby.
I'm blue Hawaii.
Elvis borrowed from others, according to the theory, but he did not steal.
You cannot have Elvis without having all these other people who are in Elvis. This is my idea. And I'm saying when you have them, Elvis becomes even greater. I mean, Elvis doesn't get diminished.
And so Elvis lives on the Iowa campus, where a new generation studies his songs, reflects on his performances, and discovers deep meanings in novels with Elvis-like characters.
Now this begins to become metaphorical.
As the syllabus says, there's a whole lot of signifying going on.
You ain't no friend of mine.
Chris Bury, ABC News, Iowa City, Iowa.
As we said, the classics. That's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Have a nice evening. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Monday.
Hi, Daddy.
A single man adopts a child.
Daddy love Adam.
He knew it wouldn't be easy.
Yes.
But he didn't know just how hard.
I have a son.
That's it, all right.
Fetal alcohol syndrome.
Jimmy Smith stars in a story of love and triumph. The Broken Chord, Monday at 9, 8 Central.
When you buy your waterbed from Big Sur, it's like buying directly from the factory, because Big Sur owns the factory. It's how we keep quality high and the price is so low. Imagine a complete solid wood waterbed for just $139.99 in your choice of sizes. This Shiloh waterbed with lots of storage space is only $159.99, or the Scottsdale with bookcase headboard and detailed mirror is just $175.99. Factory direct savings from Big Sur Waterbeds, 3715 Merle Hay Road at Douglas in Des Moines.
Tonight.
I've poisoned your products. I put rat poison in your capsules. People will die if you don't get them off the shelf.
A new kind of terrorist strikes fear at the public. What were his motives?
FBI, freeze, you're under arrest.
An all-new FBI, the untold stories. Then,
Sheriff!
Cops playing a high-stakes game.
Somebody tags you, you tag somebody else.
Collaring an informant, making a bust. American Detective.
You'll see today's breaking news stories